There Will Be Blood is a 2007 film directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Daniel Plainview is an oil man, as he will be sure to tell his investors. Daniel Plainview is a family man, his son used as a prop, and as evidence to this fact and to his down-to-earth goodness. Daniel Plainview is successful, a quality that often follows the ruthless. Around the beginning of the 20th century, Plainview adopts a baby, HW, from a man who dies in an accident. More like snatched, really, and only used to convince others of his trustworthiness. He establishes an oil company over the next few years, and after a tip from a young man, he travels to California to establish a larger operation. Plainview comes into conflict with Eli, the local preacher. He meets a man, Henry, claiming to be his half-brother, and when Plainview exposes this lie, he murders him. Plainview is blackmailed into being baptized by Eli in an embarrassing public display. Years later, now terribly wealthy, HW, who is now deaf, leaves his father's employ to start his own business. Plainview reveals HW's origins. Eli comes to Plainview to beg for financial assistance. He murders Eli instead.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up!
There Will Be Blood confronts the loss of conventional theistic morality that dominated the Western world before the Age of Enlightenment. Dissolution of strict moral absolutism ordained by a creator resulted in new paths laid down as replacements. Immanuel Kant famously secularized the Christian golden rule as the categorical imperative, insisting that human beings should only act as if their actions could be universal law. Arthur Schopenhauer argued that only compassion can drive moral acts. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that with the secularization of society, human beings needed to craft their own morality and their own values, but that not everyone would be able to do so. Daniel Plainview does not give his philosophy a name. We can only ascertain his worldview from his brief speech about hating most people and through his actions. There are some noticeable and almost certainly unintentional parallels between Plainview and Nietzsche. The German philosopher's father was a Lutheran pastor, and perhaps because of this, he thought to study the motives of preachers. What brings these men to their conclusions about morality, and what makes them believe. Nietzsche, though a philosopher himself, believed that both philosophy and religion were expressions of self-interest. Plainview admits his own self-interest. He never categorizes it as a failing, he never questions it. When he was young, he saw a house, and he wanted it. When he was older, he found oil, and he wanted it. When he saw a baby, he wanted him for his own purposes. Plainview believes self-interest is the only motivator, and because of this, he assumes Eli Sunday, the leader of the congregation of the Church of the Third Revelation, is also motivated by the same. Plainview does not even consider the possibility that Eli may be sincere. Eli might even believe himself sincere and selfless, but by the philosophy of Nietzsche, there may be no such thing, and that Eli is only fooling himself. When Plainview brings prosperity to the people of Little Boston, Eli understands that his power has been usurped in two ways. First, Plainview is now the leader of the community and the most important figure in it. Second, prosperous people require less from God. People with full stomachs are not desperate, and Eli needs them to be desperate enough to believe that only he can drive out the demons. Desperate enough to believe that he can see ghosts and cure afflictions by laying hands on his flock. Plainview does not hate religion, he merely sees it as both phony and a means in which to control people. He uses religion when he begins drilling, giving his own blessing in front of the townspeople, a prayer in which he is now God. At the end of the film, Plainview, holding firm in his suspicion about Eli Sunday all these years later, forces the preacher to admit that he is a false prophet and that God is a superstition. Eli does so, initially claiming that he is only doing this to humor Plainview, but in his shouts, we may be hearing the truth of his convictions. To Plainview, Eli uses religion to rationalize his selfish motives. When Plainview begins his drilling operation in Little Boston, home of the Sundays and many others, he brings water wells, education, roads, a proper society, but controlled entirely by one wealthy man. He strips power from the church by denying Eli the right to bless the operation. Nietzsche asserted that a good and healthy aristocracy led by a select few will raise us up. Plainview is bringing prosperity to the people, but this is merely the byproduct of his own success. This is consistent with Nietzsche's view of the ÜBERMENSCH, the ideal superior human being of the future, who could rise above conventional morality to create and impose his own values. Plainview does not require or even want the approval of others, and certainly not the approval of a god he does not believe in. Plainview treats his one business associate reasonably well, as he is more or less on his level and not a competitor. He treats others, those he believes less than himself, as nothing or as fools. Nietzsche's so-called master morality states that we only have duties towards our peers, and that we may treat those we think as less than us as we please.
There are times when I look at people and I see nothing worth liking.
Both the oil man and the preacher desire power. They simply have different means in which to attain it. Daniel Plainview is more monstrous than his counterpart. He is dishonest to others, but honest with himself. Eli Sunday is less monstrous, but he is dishonest to others and himself. In Nietzschean terms, Plainview is a worthy leader. He came up from underground, injured, dirty, and bloody, and remade his own world in his image, however despicable that image is. To Nietzsche and to Plainview, Eli Sunday is not a worthy leader. Plainview is forced to beg for the blood of Christ, insincere as he may be, but it is Eli who is bloodless in the harsher sense. He is soft and unfit. Plainview yells, "I want the blood," but we, the audience, are not sure if he's demanding the blood of Christ to wash away his sins, or Eli's blood as revenge for this humiliation. In the end, we only see Eli's blood in his death. Eli and the whole Sunday family appear to represent the Christian faith, or at least the institution in a more general sense, their surname a double for the Christian Sabbath, after all. Eli is the physical embodiment of Nietzsche's view of religion. Nietzsche saw religion as something used by the weak and powerless. In a sermon, Eli rejects the Christian concept of universal salvation, also called universal reconciliation. Universal salvation is the doctrine that states all sinful human souls, due to divine love and mercy, will ultimately be reconciled to God. Unsurprisingly, the Bible has conflicting messages about this. Proponents of universal salvation cite the first epistle to the Corinthians. As all die in Adam, so all will be made alive in Christ. Whereas opponents cite the Gospel of Luke. Someone asked him, "Lord, are only a few people going to be saved?" He said to them, "Make every effort to enter through the narrow door, because many, I tell you, will try to enter and will not be able to. Once the owner of the house gets up and closes the door, you will stand outside knocking and pleading, 'Sir, open the door for us.' But he will answer, 'I don't know you or where you come from.'" Opponents of universal salvation, like Eli, believe in what is generally called special salvation, something as narrow as Nietzsche's aristocracy. The point is that if a theistic basis for morality will not protect everyone, a secular morality can seem more appealing. Plainview, a powerful but vile Nietzschean Übermensch, stands in contrast to this. Nietzsche once said, "God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was the holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned, has bled to death under our knives? Who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatest of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? The meaning is often misunderstood. The quote points to the Western world's reliance on religion as a moral compass and source of meaning. Nietzsche, seeing the coming of secularism, tried to convey that God is no longer a credible source of absolute moral principles. This was not something the philosopher necessarily welcomed. He had concerns about what this would mean for humanity, which is why he placed so much importance on human beings replacing the morals of God, in a sense, becoming our own gods. This, of course, can and certainly has been twisted historically to a frightening degree. Plainview, immediately before murdering his Christian foe, the representative of God, declares himself a kind of god, mocking Eli, and exclaiming, "I am the third revelation," shunning the church that forcibly baptized him, and therefore positioning himself and his own values in its place. Nietzsche believed conventional morality was not only false, but objectionable, and that it weakened the innate strength and power in human beings afforded to them by nature. Plainview is a Nietzschean protagonist, even unintentionally resembling the German philosopher behind his bushy mustache. He says that he looks at a human being and sees nothing to like. His desire for wealth is not only a need for power, but also for the isolation that it would allow him. A philosophy of self-interest, by definition, would leave someone without anyone to trust, any true, meaningful companionship. The peace from other people brings him no solace. He is miserable among people because he refuses to see their worth, and in alienating them, he is also miserable alone. Hi everyone, if you like what I do, consider clicking on the orange Patreon link below. That's how this show happens. It's also a way for you to request an episode, so check it out.